message is clear. Most of the African states presidents who are attending that Africa Climate Summit at the Kenyatta International Conference Center ending today have said that Kenya has to, that Africa has to seize the moment, that it's now, that all those climate actions have to be taken for us to reduce the impact of climate change in Africa. I'll just give you a quote from President RUTO. This is what he's saying, that Africa has summoned the confidence to confront harder facts, engage truthfully, and forge a common position on critical issues that project a new, bold, and radically transformative voice. It's beautiful words. If we listen to the president of Southern Sudan, Simba Kiage, is what he's saying. We must seize the opportunity of the African Climate Summit to come up with ways to address climate change impact. Samia Hassan Suluhu. The stakes are high, and actions have to take place today. As Africans, we have no choice but to seize the moment. Even the Libyan president, Mohamed Menfi, is saying that we need harmonized climate initiatives to face the challenge and stand against interests of some industrialized countries. So when you listen to the African presidents make those pronouncements at the back of the Africa Climate Summit, you see that all their statements are well-intentioned, that these individuals will know where we are as a continent in as regards the effects of climate change and what would be the effects of climate change if majority of us are not yet feeling. If indeed they are truthful, the only critique is this: that climate conversations have always been about conversations. When are we going to move away from statements, conversations, intentions that is going to talk about implementation? Is that another question we should be asking individually then around all these African nations? Even as you say that majority of those African presidents are talking about how majority of the industrialized countries essentially need to be accountable for their carbon footprint in Africa. We are Africa. We are the people who are allowing these countries to do business with us, to open these industries with us. Sooner rather than later, when we shall be developed as a continent, we're not very far away from where majority of these developed countries are. Who shall we blame? Very important question to ask. I'll be telling you exactly what Kenya has plans for around climate change and action in the country in as much as clean energy is concerned later on. But for now, we take a tiny breather. Once we come back, I'll be taking you straight to your newspapers this morning. This is the Morning Drifts, but most certainly you're watching Lookuptv. My name is Simba Kiage. Welcome back. The hashtag is the Morning Drift. My name is Simba Kiage. This is Lookuptv. Question. And this is the Daily Nation this morning. Saying, don't kill us with debts. That is according to President William RUTO, and that's a message to the rest of the developed nations. They're saying, addressing a global gathering of dignitaries in Nairobi, President William RUTO decries unfair loan agreements with the West, saying that this continue to disadvantage and impoverish the continent And as a former UN Secretary of State John Kerry lauds RUTO's leadership, he blows hot and cold on climate reparations to Africa. A particular story has been covered on pages 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the Daily Nation. It's when you look at this particular headline right here, it is one that President William Ruto has been drumming support for. It is spoken about maybe even how Africa states can achieve autonomy in having a proper currency, an African currency that would come in and help them trade among themselves. This, among other things, the president believes are going to be proper steps towards achieving some of these climate actions that the continent wants to get closer to. And if you look at it, this is what he's saying, and this is a quote here: how do we get Africa to pay 5 times more than the rest? We're not asking to be favored or treated differently. We just need a conversation. On the front page of the Daily Nation, you're going to see proper pictures there of the more than 20 heads of state from different nations in Africa who attended that particular climate summit. Strong picture right there. On the sidelines of that, there's a story here that we're going to talk about this morning heavily on our Raila team now wants political parties to pick IEBC chiefs. On page 8, Azimio chief and his camp are rooting for an inter-party parliamentary group set up to spearhead radical election reforms reminiscent of a similar arrangement in 1997. We're going to talk about this shortly on our big conversation this morning. Other than that, the particular story has been covered on page 8. This story on climate has been covered on page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. There is a story here on how a lawyer has now made a U-turn and rescinds decision to withdraw Mumia's case. Lawyer had filed a notice to withdraw a liquidation petition against the sugar company, but has changed her mind, as now seeking the court's permission to rescind the withdrawal. That particular case right there by Mumia and Sugar continues, and we don't know exactly how it has gotten the president speaking, and even the billionaire Rai also entangled in it. That particular story being covered on page 10 of the Daily Nation. That's it. Now you don't know. Let's then move over to the next daily this morning. We do have the Standard, and this is the bigger headline here, that Africa's loud voice, powerful message. Nearly 20 African presidents converged in Nairobi to talk about climate change, and they did not disappoint. They are confident of continent's renewable energy potential and wants the globe's mega emitters to honor their financial pledges. Today, they adopt a declaration deemed to be a game changer. Some coverage on pages 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7 of the Standard. Yeah, there's a quote of the Standard by President William Ruto. Is saying that Africa has summoned the confidence to confront hard facts, engage truthfully, and forge a common position on critical issues that project a new, bold, and radically transformative voice. That is President William Ruto, who was the president of Kenya, on the sidelines of the Africa Climate Summit. That particular story again, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7. Those are the pages on the Standard. It's important. There's a story on pages 17 that you're going to read on how Kenya is now mulling a petrol diesel vehicles ban. Really? When is this likely to happen? Yeah, read that particular story on page 17. We do know that there are other countries that have already said that as from 2030 upwards, they're not going to allow any fossil fuel engines to come out of new vehicle factory. But for us now to declare that probably we might be cancelling diesel and petrol vehicles into the country, when do you think that's going to happen? Maybe 2050, 2080? Yeah, talk to us at Lookuptv across all your social media platforms. Internationally, that we're going to talk about football on who has a chance to qualify for AFCON. We do know that there is an international break that is going to see majority of African nations get into that competition to qualify for AFCON 2023. I'm going to tell you exactly what that is, but for those who are asking, no, Kenya is not in it. It's not. As we take a tiny breather, once we come back then, I'll be taking you straight to the newsroom where we get to look at the biggest stories that you are waking up to this morning. Good morning. Let's start with a story this morning that we're calling Mambo ni Matatu. All right? Like, it's a 3-issue story. Now, Linda Jamii has moved to court challenging the utterances made by President William Ruto on sugar cartels, claiming it is in violation of the constitutional principle of the rule of law. Now, the petition filed by Linda Jamii through its director, Fred Ogola, claims that the remarks made by President William Ruto border on a cold-hearted death threat by the president, or is a symbol of national unity.
Wafisadi wote wahame Kenya, na wasipohama tunawafunga jela, na wakiendelea wapange mpango waende mbinguni.
They are words that have elicited debate in the country, with different actors taking the chance to castigate the president for what they term are threats.
The president, whose utterances were aimed at the 2 Rai brothers mentioned herein above, told the Rai brothers to either leave Kenya, withdraw cases they have filed in court over the control of management of sugar, or go to jail or go to heaven.
Lobby group Linda Jamii is the latest to call out President William Ruto. Led by the director, Fred Ogola, the group has filed a petition to challenge the utterances.
We have just submitted a petition to High Court of Kenya challenging the utterances made by the President William Ruto, which are in violation of the constitutional principle of the rule of law, among other various provisions. This petition is about the unfortunate remarks made by the President of the Republic of Kenya in his uncharacteristic castigation of what he terms as cartels in the sugar industry in the country, which unfortunate remarks border on cold-hearted death threats by the President, who is the symbol of national unity. Additionally,
Ogola further argues that the president's utterances not only amount to death threats, but also undermine the principle of the rule of law and separation of powers, doctrines, and the system of checks and balances contemplated in the Constitution.
The petitioner, which is Operation Jamii, argues that the president's impunged utterances not only amount to death threats, but also undermine the principles of the rule of law and separation of powers, doctrines, and the systems of checks and balances contemplated in the Constitution. The President's comments, if not retracted, an official and conditional apology proffered from the Presidency will create a perception in the Republic of Kenya that undermines judicial independence by dint of it being the custodian of justice and due process in Kenya, and will also see the rule of law disrespected without recourse.
The group wants the court to issue a declaration that the utterances of the president undermine judicial authority, contrary to Articles 48, 50, and 159 of the Constitution.
The president's utterances are also a threat to the independence of the judiciary, a threat to the independence of the freedom of the bar, a threat to the independence of access to justice, and avenue for creating bad precedents.
The group now wants the president to issue a public apology, adding that failure of the presidency to issue a public and conditional apology to Kenyans.
Therefore, our main plea before the Honorable Court is that they confer a ruling that the president's utterances are out of order, that the president must unconditionally apologize and withdraw the utterances, failure to which we shall submit a petition to Parliament seeking for his procedural impeachment.
Brian Amwai, Lookuptv, Nairobi.
Residents of Lodwar, Turkana County have been forced to walk long distances to access water. And what is worse, after numerous kilometers, the water they access is unclean, which is now causing waterborne diseases among the locals.
Water shortage continues to be a crisis in most parts of the country, with the situation in Turkana County proving dire. The situation has forced residents to trek for long distances searching for water, while others are forced to access unclean water at Kawalase River and Takwel River.
Shida yetu hapa kubwa ni maji. Maji ndio imekuwa shida. Kupata maji hapa sio rahisi upate. Inabidi uende distance ya karibu 5 km kupata maji. Lowasco wameshindwa kuprovide na mapipes za maji. Si maji hapa tuko na 5 years bila kupata maji.
The residents are accusing the water supply company Lowasco for failing to provide services to locals, leading to waterborne diseases infection.
Kampuni ile ya Lowasco inasemekana ya kwamba ni kampuni, lakini hatuoni maji ikikuja. Hao wanaishi tu wakisema kwamba maji itatufikia na hatuoni. Sasa tunasema ya kwamba hata hiyo kampuni afadhali walibadilishe kampuni walete kampuni nyingine. Kwa sababu sasa sisi tunakunywa maji ya laga, hii ya laga iko na chumvi na iko na wadudu sasa hivi ndani. Hata hatuelewi tutafanya nini.
Kampuni ya Lowasco haijatusaidia, nasikia tu haijatusaidia.
The residents are now calling on the county government to intervene and provide a solution hastily.
Tungeomba serikali ya county itusaidie na maji. Lowasco imeshindwa na kazi. So sisi tunayaomba maji kama wakazi wa Kawalase. Maji connected tupate maji because hiyo ndio kitu yetu ya maana.
Nushin Mungasia, Lookuptv, Nairobi.
Murang'a County have arrested 26 female Ethiopian aliens who were holed up in a 3-roomed house, allegedly for being in the country illegally. Orimo Wasike brings you more on the story.
It is in this room where the 26 refugees from Ethiopia were found camping. Their faces telling the tales of horror they went through here. In the raid, 2 people were arrested in the syndicate. Confirming the incident, Murang'a County Police Commander David Matthew stated that they received the intel from locals and jumped into action.
Tumeweza kujua kwamba walianza kusafiri ama walivuka mpaka tarehe 14 mwezi wa 7 mpaka tarehe 2 mwezi wa 9. Lakini hawakuwa wanakuja wote pamoja, wanakuja 2 watatu hivyo. Na pia tumeweza kujua kwamba ni kama walikuwa wanakuja wachache. Lakini wote wako hapa 26, na pia tumeweza kuwapata watu 2 ambao tumewakamata na watatupa habari zaidi kuhusiana na hawa wasichana ambao wako mahali hapa kutoka nchi ya Ethiopia.
Among those arrested were girls between the ages of 22 to 32 at the house of Philip Kamwaro, who is currently the main suspect, while the police arrested another man by the name of David Gachengu to help with the investigation. Wairimu Wasike, Lookuptv.
Mombasa County has launched an electric-powered tuk-tuk with a capacity to travel up to 120 kilometers before recharging. The Union of Tuk-Tuk Action have stated that the move would help in conserving the environment. Let's take a look at this one.
Mombasa Transport Association have embraced the use of electric power vehicles with the aim of helping to curb climate change effects to the environment, especially harmful gases emitted by vehicles using petrol and diesel fuel. This system of transportation, which has begun gaining popularity in the county, has been well received by the residents and the managers of these associations, terming it as environmental friendly.
Cha kwanza kabisa, hii gari lazima uwe msafi nayo. Yote tayari tumeshaanza kuhifadhi mazingira. Haina kelele, pollution free. Itasaidia sana.
Led by Wycliffe Mwale and Benjamin Jumwa, who is the chairperson of the association, have requested for easy availability of the tuk-tuk spare parts, as well as building a factory that will smoothen its manufacturing in Kenya.
Ziongezeke kwa soko, ili nayo hata bei ya vitu zingine kama batteries zikuwe nyingi na at least ziwe kuna betri ambayo inaweza enda muda mrefu kiasi. Otherwise hii kwangu iko na faida kubwa, hata kwa madereva wengi itakuwa faida kubwa, especially watu wale kule mashinani ambao kuna stima lakini petroli kule ni shida. Hii ndio na iko na nguvu, kuna nguvu ya kubeba mizigo, kuna nguvu ya kubeba abiria. Hata ukiangalia ndani inaweza kaa abiria waine, ni kubwa kidogo hata kuliko ile nyingine.
Tuk-tuks that use electric power goes up to 120 km mileage before the battery drains, which takes a span of 4 hours to recharge.
Pesa nilikuwa natumia kujaza mafuta ilikuwa pesa nyingi sana kwa siku. Sometimes hata unapata dereva anaweza enda kakwamia kwa barabara kukosa mafuta. Lakini juu hii hakuna mafuta yote tunashughulika nayo, inakuwa faida imepanda juu kiasi.
Kama mafuta unatumia 1200 na hizi utatumia robo ya ile mafuta, ambapo utaiswap mara moja, inamaanisha utalipishwa kwa fuel shilingi 400. Tunaikumbatia 100%.
Mostly this type of a vehicle uses one or more electric motors that transmits energy to its battery. The quality of the battery of these vehicles vary within the type of a vehicle. Additionally, when using this type of a tuk-tuk, they do not emit smoke, neither do they make noise. Electric vehicles feel lighter to drive because they accelerate more quickly than cars with conventional fuel engines. Roga Iwal, Lookuptv.
At least 68 students of Shandarema Boys High School in Kakamega were forced to sleep in the cold after a fire razed down their dormitory. The fire is said to have started in the afternoon and spread throughout one of the dormitories. Police have launched investigations to establish the cause of the fire.
Students of Shandarema Boys School in Shinyalu, Kakamega County are counting losses following a Monday afternoon fire in the dormitory that destroyed belongings of at least 68 students.
Wanafunzi karibu 68 hawana mahali pa kulala, hawana vitabu. Shule imepoteza vitabu ambao walikuwa navyo na mambo yote ambayo walikuwa wameandika yamepotea. Kwa hivyo tunaomba wahisani watembelee shule na waweze kuokoa shule. Shule ilikuwa na jina nzuri, wamekuwa wakifanya michezo, wamefika mbali. Lakini haya mambo ambayo yametokea, tunaomba wanafunzi asiwarudishe nyuma. Jina la shule bado linaendelea kung'aa na tunaomba kwamba kwa sababu ni muhula wa mitihani warudi kwa vitabu wakati mipango inaendelea kufanywa ili matokeo ya shule yawe mazuri.
Speaking to the press, one of the school sponsors, Eric Lungaho, said that the cause of the fire is still unknown, although investigations concerning the matter had commenced. Lungaho asked the school's community to remain calm as the situation was being handled.
Mkasa ambao uliweza kutokea karibu mwendo wa saa 9 alasiri leo, moto ambao ulitokea katika dormitory moja katika hii shule. Nataka ni appeal kwa wanafunzi pamoja na the entire school community kuendelea kuwa watulivu, maana kuna investigative agencies ambao wako shuleni saa hizi ambao wanajaribu kuchunguza ili tukaweza kujua chanzo cha hiki moto ilitokana na wapi.
Area residents have appealed to the government to hasten the reconstruction as the exam period is approaching and the students need a conducive environment to continue with their studies.
Na ningependa kuomba wanafunzi wa Shandema tuwe watulivu, na ningependa kuomba viongozi wetu wakiongozwa hata na mama wetu, Mama Nanziva ambaye ni MCA wetu, bunge wetu wa Shinyalu Mheshimiwa Freddy Kana, gavana wetu wa Kakamega Gavana Fernandez Baraza, pamoja na women rep wa Kakamega Mama Elsie na senator wetu wa Kakamega, muweze kuungana pamoja tukuje tusaidie shule hii kwa sababu wanafunzi wengi ambao wameathirika na janga la moto ambalo limefanyika siku ya leo.
Hadasa Crystal, Lookuptv, Nairobi.
The Central Bank of Kenya Governor Kamau Thuge has stated that the country does not recognize cryptocurrency as a legal way of making transactions, and therefore the operation framework of WorldCoin is illegal. Mervyn Getembe with more.
As the probe on WorldCoin operation continues to take shape, CBK Governor Kamau Thuge dismissed the controversial registration, saying cryptocurrency is not a legal way of making transactions, and therefore the operation framework is illegal.
To my knowledge, and I could be wrong, I don't think there is a country that has adopted Bitcoin as legal tender. But I think just to assure you, Mheshimiwa Kiage, we are not burying our heads in the sand. We are trying to be cautious. I did say we try to maximize on opportunities while at the same time minimizing risk.
Cryptocurrency is illegal. I think that needs to be very clear. It is not legal tender.
Dagoretti MP John Kiage said that Kenyans were induced to have their iris scanned, and that were if not for the token given in return, then Kenyans could have bashed the registration.
That WorldCoin were in town to register individuals and users to a new system they are calling the WorldCoin. However, if they had come to KICC and not offered a cryptocurrency in exchange for the iris scan, chances are we would not be talking of 350 Kenyans registering, meaning that there was a transaction going down in our malls and a transaction happening in a place like KICC. My question was, being that I walk into KICC, have my iris scanned, and in exchange I'm induced with a payment called cryptocurrency, was the WorldCoin operation in Kenya legal or illegal?
According to the CBK governor, he is not in a position to monitor M-Pesa transaction due to the value of transaction done. CBK was then required to submit a written report after necessary engagement with Safaricom.
The amount of transactions that take place in M-Pesa in a week is in the hundreds of billions.
According to the victims who appeared before the committee, WorldCoin agents told them that the purpose of WorldCoin registration was to analyze data. Victims also complained of health complications. They are then expected to record a statement at the DCI offices tomorrow for further investigations.
I can't do without glasses. It's something that I need to do with the glasses. Meaning, when I don't use my glasses when using a computer or watching TV, it will turn red.
Your eyes will turn red.
Yeah, and get irritated.
And before the WorldCoin experience, you're okay?
I was okay, yes.
Okay. Mavin Getembe, Lookuptv, Nairobi.
Now, the Kenya Medical Supply Authority acting CEO Andrew Mulwa had a rough time explaining to the Public Investments Committee on the Auditor General's report on the destruction of an assortment of drugs worth 150 million shillings after their expiry. Stanley Lugaria with that story.
The Drugs Distribution Authority KEMSA, led by Chief Executive Officer Andrew Mulwa, on Tuesday while appearing before the National Assembly Committee on Public Investments to answer on the reports arising in the Auditor General's report, Nancy Gathungu, on alleged misuse of funds from the authority's financial reports for the financial years 2017 to 2021 respectively. The committee wants the authority to explain the real situation in the process of dumping of expired medical products and how to eliminate criminals in the waste of the authority's money.
To indicate that despite the quality problems that this product had and was withdrawn and delisted, there was change in policy from the syrup to the dispersible tablet. So I think even if the product was to be even if the product was to be lifted, he could not supply that product because it was no longer in use for clinical management, and therefore there was a product substitution agreement.
KEMSA boss had a difficult time explaining the claims of misuse of authorities' money by the previous leadership, as he concurred with the Auditor General's report that KEMSA did not have the title deeds of land worth more than 150 million shillings, including title deeds of Meru municipal land.
So it was hard to establish the ownership. Is it owned by KEMSA or is it owned by the state agency? To resolve this, we approached the county government, and they gave us an alternative piece of land, about 10 acres, which we have progressed, and we now have a...
But we have made a lot of progress in terms of the land getting titled. Was mainly, most of it is the cadastral survey, which has already been undertaken. We are awaiting the report.
According to Auditor General, KEMSA could not explain the claims of exchange that may have received as discovered in the report. Mulwa failed to provide a complete report on business and other payments, including long-term debts of more than 800 million shillings that could not be provided, while he failed to explain why the authority did business with the Ministry of Health on debt.
There was a question on why we are doing business with the Ministry of Health on credit. I've just explained that we offer supply chain services. We offer supply chain services to the ministry for the national strategic programs, and once we finish the distribution of the commodities under those programs, that is when we invoice the ministry. We don't give credit to suppliers. We don't, not unless, and it's very rare. It has happened about only 2 times in my 12-year experience, where a supplier is supposed to be given prepayment for a certain project.
Regarding the implementation of the budget, Mulwa found difficulty in explaining the lack of income of more than 452 million shillings, while the committee requested the authority to avoid the huge budget allocations so as to avoid funds misappropriation as captured by the Auditor General.
The wisdom of the administration then was to do that. The practice currently is different.
Misappropriation of public funds took center stage during the meeting today. KEMSA, while appearing before the Public Investment Committee, has concurred that indeed there was public misappropriation of public funds, and now has been asked by the committee to turn around the issues. Stanley Lugaria, Lookuptv, Nairobi.
As the Africa Climate Summit entered its second day, President William Ruto has continued to lament over the existing financial systems, which he says is unfair to African countries, while calling for commensurate payment methods with the European countries. Ruto took the opportunity to assure the delegates that the continent will not relent in a bid to ensure there is an overhaul of the existing financial systems.
Many of our countries, and we are here and they say figures don't lie, 9 countries are already in debt distress in our continent, over the cliff. 13 countries are classified as high risk, and another 17 countries are classified as moderate risk. And the biggest contributor to debt distress in our continent is high interest rates. We pay 5 times more than others. Meaning that in fact, the architecture is set up in a manner that if you borrow, it will be difficult for you to pay. And that is why we need a conversation, and a very candid conversation, and we are saying this in all honesty, around how do we get concessional funding? How do we pay as much as others are paying? How do we get Africa away from paying 5 times more? And I asked in this gathering, we're not asking to be favored. We're not asking to be treated differently. We want a fair financial system that treats everybody equally. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not too much to ask.
Now, President William Ruto has asked for fairness in tackling climate change in Africa. Speaking on the second day of the Africa Climate Summit, Ruto further proposed the introduction of a carbon tax to deal with the effects of climate change, which forced governments to divert resources to deal with calamities. Ian Ketani now reports.
Day 2 of the Africa Climate Summit. Heads of state and government thronging KICC to deliberate on measures to counter climate change. With the African continent facing adverse effects of climate change, despite contributing just 3% of global emissions, President William Ruto lamented over African countries being forced to divert development funds to curb the effects of climate change.
Many of our countries are headed into debt distress because of climate change. Let's be honest. And because of climate change, we are forced to divert resources that are meant for economic growth into dealing with the effects of climate change. I've had to increase resources meant for school feeding from 1.5 million children in school under school feeding. We've had to scale up this year to 4 million kids in school to be put under school feeding, and we've had to rearrange the budget to provide for that.
Despite the surging cost of living across the globe, the head of state noted that African countries use between 5 to 15% of their GDP to counter climate change.
We don't want to die in this continent. We don't want to die of debt, but we also don't want to die of poverty. That is why we must have a conversation around multilateral development banks and concessional financing, and how we can finance our economies using resources that do not punish us.
With the various industries on the spot over emissions, President Ruto proposed the introduction of carbon tax in a bid to discourage emissions and fund other development projects.
We believe it is time to have a conversation about carbon tax. We believe it is the only way, it is among the ways that we can raise additional and adequate resources for us to finance our development. And while we are thinking about financing, for us in Africa, 3 things are very important. As they say in Kenya, mambo ni matatu. Number 1, speed. It takes inordinate to access any meaningful resources. Number 2, it requires scale. And number 3, affordability, so that we all pay the same.
Sultan Al Jaber, the president of COP28, on his part noted that funds must be made available to actualize the summit's resolutions, with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres calling on large emitters to take responsibility.
And the key to making this happen is, of course, finance and finance and finance. This finance must be made available. This must be made accessible, and this finance must be made affordable.
And the largest emitters must lead the charge in line with my Climate Solidarity Pact and Acceleration Agenda.
Ian Keitani, Lookuptv.
So, the president said, as they say in Kenya. Do we say that? Are we the people who said mambo ni matatu? No. He's the one who said it. In fact, that particular statement has got him in trouble. It looks as if the president is enjoying that statement. But it's even failing on him, because some of the issues that we're going to talk about this morning is a story that has been covered on page 10, where a businesswoman a lawyer is making a U-turn, rescinding the decision to withdraw a Mumias case. So, labda mambo mawili, si mambo matatu, because now it looks as if Kenyans do not want this issue for mambo ni matatu. And that particular story is part of what we're going to talk about this morning. Now, on the sidelines of that, we do know that the talks at the Bomas of Kenya are taking proper ground. As we speak, the technical teams are meeting on the sidelines of those conversations just to advise the major faces behind that particular side on exactly how they're supposed to approach those issues. Now, one thing is coming out. It looks as if the Azimio coalition now wants to go all the way back to 1997, where political parties now are going to pick the officials for IEBC. But what does the law state? And we're talking about the electoral law. It's a good thing that we do have a lawyer who on the panel this morning who's just going to make us understand. It states that a committee, which is essentially a selection panel, shall then invite applications, vet and interview all those commissioners who've applied for IEBC jobs and then send those names for approval to the president. But then the Azimio coalition is saying, no, let's go back to 1997, where the political parties are the ones that are going to choose the IEBC officials. That and much more then coming up shortly right here on the Morning Drift. My name is Simba Kiage, online at Lookuptv across all your social media platforms. See you shortly.
Realize your home ownership dream by investing in Brookvale Tuala, a magnificent prime residential property located in Ongata, Rongai. Brookvale Tuala by Safaricom Investment Cooperative overlooks the majestic Ngong Hills and lies only 24 kilometers from Nairobi CBD. The project boasts of well-serviced plots with a perimeter wall, graded roads and a borehole. 50 by 100 plots are going for 1.4 million shillings with a flexible payment plan of up to 6 months. To book your plot, call 0729-121212 today. Safaricom Investment Cooperative, the investment partner of choice.
Hapa panajulikana kama Napetao. Hapa tumekuja na zaidi ya chakula 500 ili kuhakikisha wakazi hapa angalau wanapokea kitu cha kutia mdomoni. Unavyoangalia hali ya anga sehemu hii, jamani, kuna ukame. Wakati wowote ambapo wewe unacheza loto, 25% ya pesa ambazo unatumia unakuja kufanikisha shughuli kama hii.
Thank you for your help. Together, we are changing lives.
Praise the Lord and Bwana Yesu asifiwe sana. My name is Pastor Joseph. I'm from a ministry called Reconcilers World. God gives strength to the weary. I am, Jesus is speaking. He says, I am the door. Then he says, anyone who enters in through me will be saved. The Lord is my shepherd or shepherd. Then he says, I will always have everything I need. God desires to guide you. He's telling you that this day, don't just trust the Lord, but he's telling you, trust the Lord widely.
Hi, and welcome to Tujenge Home. Your #1 show when it comes to all things architecture, real estate, property development, interior design. You get it right here on Tujenge Home. When the food is ready.
You want to serve them?
Dinner is served. Yeah. Let's go. Let's go.
Beautiful, wonderful, glorious. We are having the show that we share entitled Shepherd Voice.
I'm waiting for you to get me to Kenya. That's what I'm waiting
for you.
God is the source of every blessings that flow into your life.
And I know that God is going to bless you and to do a new thing.
Pray. Pray.
Kipindi ni ukulima ni
ni mali na manjoro. Kumbuka hapa ndipo unajifunza mambo mengi kuhusu ukulima. Kilimo ni uti wa mgongo wa nchi, na ukiwa na njoro unajifunza. Kumbuka, angalia mwenyewe. Tunakuambia ukitaka kujua tips za ukulima, ungana na sisi kwenye Lookuptv every Sunday. Unatukuta pale saa 10, tunakuonesha kuhusu ukulima. Ukulima wa mimea, ukulima wa ng'ombe, ukulima wa kuku, ukulima wa mbuzi na yote ambayo yanahusiana na ukulima. Kumbuka nini? Kipindi ni ukulima ni mali.
Karibu mtazamaji kwenye kipindi cha jamii na itikadi.
Kaini kitako tuna mengi.
Mapenzi yanapoanza watu huitana bebi na majina mengine matamu, lakini baadaye penzi linapogeuka na kuwa shubiri,
mtu anafikia kwenda kumtafuta mke mwingine.
Itakuwaje?
Yule wa kwake nyumbani labda hajamridhisha.
Ni sawa ama vipi Malkia?
Dadangu, wanaume ni kama maembe.
Huyu ni mwanamume atakuja abadiliki.
Mwanaume mwenye wanawake wengi hata katika uchumba, kwenye ndoa ataendelea. Mtu na tabia yake hawachi. Ile umbo la kike likishaanza, kila kitu kishaanza kuwa mahali pake.
Ningependa kukuona.
Sijaenda mahali ambapo mimi nilisikia mtu ati huyu alikuwa shujaa, alikufa katika mstari wa mbele wa ndoa. Sijawahi sikia mimi.
As the night falls, we come to life to bring you a comprehensive broadcast from the numerous events happening across our 47 counties.
When it breaks, it matters, and each story is important.
If it's Thursday, join me, Nancy Lima, and my able panelists as we break down the law jargons and analyze the Constitution in a way only you can understand.
The news cycle never stops, neither does time. We cover each and every sector and present to you factual and accurate occurrences. This is where facts win the day. Join me,
Nancy Lima,
Ian Keitani, Tuesday, every Wednesday,
Thursday,
as from 9 p.m. on The Insight, only on Lookuptv.
Somewhere, and I don't want to say who, is saying now that that is a Kenyan statement. But then, on the sidelines of that declaration, a lot of us are saying, no, we do not agree. Now, without mentioning the name, I want to open you to a statement that we are essentially calling Mambo ni Matatu. Let's take a look at where that comes from.
As they say in Kenya, mambo ni matatu.
That is the man who said that statement. So I want to ask you this morning, do you agree that we in Kenya, we say mambo ni matatu? Where did that statement come from? Where did that statement originate? But we are not the only people who are asking that particular question. This morning, I want to introduce you to a lobby group, the name Linda Jamii, that has moved to court challenging the utterances by President William Ruto on sugar cartels, claiming he is in violation of the constitutional principle of the rule of law. Now, the petition filed by Linda Jamii through its director, Fred Ogola, claims that the remarks made by the president border on cold-hearted death threats by president who's the symbol of national unity. Guess what? Our producers called it this particular story. They went right ahead and said, Mambo ni matatu. Let's take a look at that story. Once we come back then, we table that conversation. I'll be introducing the panel that is joining us shortly.
Wahame Kenya. Na wasipohama tunawafunga jela. Na wakiendelea wapange mpango waende mbinguni.
They are words that have elicited debate in the country, with different actors taking the chance to castigate the president for what they term are threats.
The president, whose utterances were aimed at the two Rai brothers mentioned herein above, told the Rai brothers to either leave Kenya, withdraw cases they have filed in court over the control of management of sugar, or go to jail or go to heaven.
Lobby group Linda Jamii is the latest to call out President William Ruto. Led by the director, Fred Ogola, the group has filed a petition to challenge the utterances.
We have just submitted a petition to High Court of Kenya challenging the utterances made by the President William Ruto, which are in violation of the constitutional principle of the rule of law, among other various provisions. This petition is about the unfortunate remarks made by the President of the Republic of Kenya in his uncharacteristic castigation of what he terms as cartels in the sugar industry in the country, which unfortunate remarks border on cold-hearted death threats by the President, who is the symbol of national unity. Additionally,
Ogola further argues that the president's utterances not only amount to death threats, but also undermine the principle of the rule of law and separation of powers, doctrines, and the system of checks and balances contemplated in the Constitution.
The petitioner, which is Operation Jamii, argues that the president's impunged utterances not only amount to death threats, but also undermine the principles of the rule of law and separation of powers, doctrines, and the systems of checks and balances contemplated in the Constitution. The President's comments, if not retracted, an official and conditional apology proffered from the Presidency will create a perception in the Republic of Kenya that undermines judicial independence by dint of it being the custodian of justice and due process in Kenya, and will also see the rule of law disrespected without recourse.
The group wants the court to issue a declaration that the utterances of the president undermine judicial authority, contrary to Articles 48, 50, and 159 of the Constitution.
The president's utterances are also a threat to the independence of the judiciary, a threat to the independence of the freedom of the bar, a threat to the independence of access to justice, and avenue for creating bad precedents.
The group now wants the president to issue a public apology, adding that failure of the presidency to issue a public and conditional apology to Kenyans.
Therefore, our main plea before the Honorable Court is that they confer a ruling that the president's utterances are out of order, that the president must unconditionally apologize and withdraw the utterances, failure to which we shall submit a petition to Parliament seeking for his procedural impeachment.
Brian Amwai, Lookuptv, Nairobi.
All right. So we started with that statement. And it's a good thing that Mr. Wangui is in the studio with us this morning. The introduction was quite simple. What the president is saying, like they say in Kenya, mambo ni matatu. But Linda Jamii is saying, no, we don't say that in Kenya. That is unconstitutional. We do not recognize that statement anywhere in the precinct of law in the country. Now, let's talk about developments then that have come from this particular one before I introduce the panel that is joining us this morning. Good. Now, after the direct triple threat from President William Ruto, business tycoon Joswant Rai went right ahead to withdraw all the cases were challenging Mumia's Sugar Company. All right? Rai and his West Kenya Sugar Company withdrew all the 4 cases relating to the running of the sugar factory in notices filed before the Court of Appeal and the High Court. But then, that's not the development then. One of the lawyers right there, by the name Kimeto, is now said, I do not think it's okay for us to proceed like that. So now, she's written or appealed to the High Court to rescind her earlier filing to withdraw that particular case. So now, it's back on then. It is not mambo ni matatu then. Could be mambo ni mawili. Let me introduce the panel that is joining us this morning. Shortly, we're going to be joined by John Wanguyu. Right now, let me begin with Silas Akiro, who's an advocate of the High Court. Silas, how are you doing, sir?
Good morning, Simba. How are you?
So let me begin like this.
Yes.
When the president stands in front of more than 20 African states with translators at the African Summit and says, like they say in Kenya, mambo ni matatu. When the other president starts to investigate where that particular statement comes from, what it really means, does it paint the president in the wrong picture?
No, literally, Simba. if you contextualize this statement, well, it originated from the president himself, and we understand the environment under which he coined that word. But on the president's side, being the devil's advocate in this case, if we can sample a few tweets, let me use the former name for the company, a few tweets or even Facebook posts or social media conversations of Kenyans, you'd actually realize that the president is right in saying as they say in Kenya. Because several times we have used that word even in the studio here.
Who started the phrase?
But literally,
who's the mastermind of the phrase?
You see, if you say that like they said in Kenya, then we would refer to him.
Like I said in Kenya.
But yes, like I said in Kenya.
He should have said that.
He should have said that.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to us, like they say in Kenya, sample a few tweets, you realize the Kenyans have already taken his words and they're using it as a frame. It has become a cultural frame.
He should have patented that particular phrase because he's the one who originated that phrase.
Exactly.
And told us exactly what those 3 options are.
Yes.
So why couldn't he come in and say, well, like I say in Kenya, I'm the one who said it. It's not those are the ones who are trying to coin that particular phrase. I'm the one who said it.
Simba, you see, the reason why I say this is because at some point, I am a little bit agitated with Kenyans. Because we refuse to hold the executive to account and make joke of their statements, which informs them that probably they might be on the right track by amusing Kenyans, by making these jokes. Remember, we started with the 6 months time. In 6 months time, stadia. In 6 months time, sugar. In 6 months time, maize. He was called a Mr. 6 months time.
Yes.
It became a household joke.
Yes.
Now, he has come up with statements which are direct threat. Statements which are archaic, uncouth. I mean, that is a foul mouth from #1 employee of the country.
Yeah.
And then Kenyans have taken it out of hands. Instead of calling him out to that, we make it a joke. I think reason being, the mutadu aspect of it, I have said it. Mutadu. Now when you look at the way the political equalizers, the opposition, have handled the situation, it was very careless. The president was actually just to be shut down and told, hey, we do not have a rule of law principle allowing you, permitting you to directly threaten, even by implication, implied conduct.
Yes.
Not express. impliedly threaten a citizen of the country, or an investor, or a foreign national. Article 73, Chapter 6 of the Constitution does not guarantee the president such kind of obnoxious and out-of-hand words. But look, what have we done as Kenyans? We have pampered him. We told him, hey, you have done it well, mambo ni matatu. And we go around joking with it. Until now we've put that into practice. Tunga sentence ukitumia mambo ni matatu. So we are like, mambo ni matatu, kula fair, sijui nini. You see how we have taken it? Kenyans who are supposed to call out the president. So when the president actually says, as they say in Kenya, he will be proved right by our tweets, our social media conversations, our political statements. Influencers on social media, you look at what they are using. And the president will say, hey, look, John Kiare there, giving an example.
Yeah, mambo ni matatu.
You said mambo ni matatu. Silas Akiro over there also said mambo ni matatu. So those are Kenyans.
Here's the thing. I'm gonna ask James, for the sake of John, because he's just come into the studio. I want him to get a proper background of where we're coming from. Could you please again replay that particular clip of the president saying, as they say in Kenya, mambo ni matatu? Come on, James, let's do this.
As they say in Kenya, mambo ni matatu.
John.
Yes.
John.
Yes, good morning everyone.
Good morning.
Yes.
When did you, John, you yourself, say mambo ni matatu?
I think I said it yesterday. One of the things we've done, I think I said it yesterday.
What was your list? What was your list?
My list, I would rather not on a morning show. On a morning show with parents taking their tea, getting ready to go to work. I would rather not say it on national television.
He might
have given the order somewhere. Mambo ni matatu. Yeah.
So it is interesting. I like what we do as Kenyans sometimes to cope with. We use satire and we use comedy to cope with the so many things coming at us, which I think is a good thing. There are those who may disagree and say that sometimes we may end up trivializing what could otherwise be very, very serious matters. But for me, I am of the opinion that we, under the Bill of Rights and under the Chapter 4 of the Constitution, which guarantees us certain freedoms, which includes freedom of speech. So for me, the president exercising, as much as we put him on a pedestal, and of course him being, like my colleague here said, employee number one of the country, is we must not forget that he's also human. And he's got feelings, he's got thoughts, he's got things that he would like to put out there. That is number one. So we must understand that the Constitution guarantees us freedom of speech, unless it is hate speech. So for those guys who have moved to court, they will have a responsibility to prove that whatever the president said was inappropriate and a breach to the peace, for example.
Yes, don't they have it, John? Don't they have it, John?
I don't think
they
so.
Have it.
I don't think
There's
so.
a development in that particular threat. The main character in that case, Rai, withdrew the cases that they had in court. On the background of those threats.
I doubt. It would be very, very difficult. It would be very, very difficult. Just because this one thing happened after the other, it does not necessarily mean it's the cause of that particular course of action. That Rai did not withdraw the case simply because of the threat from the president, because it was not a direct threat to him.
When the judiciary, and I'm gonna, maybe Silas, when I come to you, we're gonna explain to us like what would have been the right response from the judiciary. John, case in point, if you were the CJ and you look over the other side, you see the executive making its pronouncement on exactly what should happen in the country. What should be your response?
Number one, like I said, there's freedom of speech. We cannot limit what people can say and not say, as much as it's within the bounds of the Constitution. And then number two, I do not understand this selective outrage that Kenyans are expressing, that given that a month ago, the president said the same thing to cattle rustlers. The president said that the same thing about 3 weeks ago to civil servants and public servants who steal public funds. It's in the public domain. So why didn't we say that the president is threatening public servants? Why didn't we say that the president is threatening cattle rustlers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is it not okay then for us to say that now?
So why the selective outrage? Why the selective outrage?
Is it proper to say, regardless of what time that we are reacting, we gotta just react to that?
Of course, we say that two wrongs don't make a right. But like I said, it's freedom of speech. The president can say anything and everything in between, as long as it's within the bounds of the Constitution. There was no express threat to Mr. Rai. If anything, the responsibility is on him.
That particular submission right there.
Yeah.
Is it within the bounds of the Constitution when somebody says, look for another country?
Look for another country?
Yes.
Yes.
It's not within, I mean, John.
Look, if you were to break the law today.
Yes.
If you were to break the law, you expect to be held to account for that, isn't it?
Fine.
Yeah. And the range of punishments that are available if it's proven that you've broken the law is quite wide, isn't it? Including going to prison. Including the death penalty, isn't it?
Yes.
So, by the president vocalizing that, he's simply stating what is in our Constitution, isn't it?
The law doesn't say that if you break the law today, John, that you're going to get kicked out of this country. John, today, if you
no. If you look at the Immigration Act, there are certain circumstances under which you cannot withdraw the citizenship of, say, person X if they're natural-born Kenyans. Yes, but in a situation where you moved into a country as an investor, for example, and you've been given citizenship rights under that particular arrangement, then it is within the law that if you're to break the law of those countries, you get deported. If you go to Canada today, or Australia, or Germany, or any other place in this world, if you break the law of those the laws of that country has a right to kick you out.
Salas, maybe
many people have been deported for breaking the law. If you go peddle drugs in the Middle East, they even kill you, isn't it? True or false?
True, and we've seen it. But doesn't mean that issue happen, isn't it?
It doesn't mean, of course, there has to be the process. There has to be. Silas, of course, being a lawyer, will know this and will help us to sort of interpret these things. But the truth of the matter is, if you break the law in any jurisdiction, you'll be treated according to the laws of that country, including all those things we are saying.
Silas, let me outline the mambo ni matatu, because we do know what he said. It's either we send you to heaven, it's either we send you to jail, all right, or we're just going to arrest you. Was this president speaking within the confines of law? Because that is exactly what we are talking about this morning. And then, Silas, why is the judiciary silent? Are they supposed to respond? Because somebody somewhere made a declaration that essentially touches on their door. The president essentially went and opened their door and told them, I've said it.
Well, Simba, when we look at these utterances judicially, a few weeks ago, I think in my last interview with you here, I said that yes, indeed, the Chief Justice or the judiciary ought to have made a remark.
Yes.
But again, I rethought that the mode of operation of the judiciary ought to be principled and premised on impartiality. Remember, like my colleague has said, two wrongs does not make a right. If the judiciary makes a statement on this, and then the lobby groups here want to approach the judiciary to make a decision basing on the statements of the president, as we seek the fair hearing for Mr. Rai, the president will say, oh, based on the judiciary statement, they are now not going to be partial on my side. They have already judged me before I appear before them. So that is why sometimes the judiciary, you understand where I'm coming from? That is why sometimes the judiciary needs to be silent on most of the issues, then wait. The judiciary can understand, or they can even know by themselves, that this act that is being brought in here by Parliament is actually unconstitutional. But they will not say it until a petition is brought before them. Why? To preserve the impartial nature with which the society expects them to act. So, Rai is actually entitled to due process. And this is where I will probably depart from the views of my colleague panelists today. We cannot say that the freedom of speech is limitless. Actually, the Bill of Rights, including the right to life, has a limitation. It has a boundary under which that can take place. Well, the president comes in to take life, to take away life, after the judiciary has rendered its opinion, and exclusively on extremely capital offenses like murder. That is where the death penalty, which the Moroatetu case also gave us a jurisprudence that it is not mandatory sentence. It has to be looked up into the lens, circumstantially, whether this murder case warrants a reciprocal murder or death penalty. So once the judiciary has recommended death, then that is when the president comes in. And even to curb that further on our societal pillars and principles, that no man has the right to take away the life of another, there is even the Presidential Committee on the Power of Mercy to make sure the person condemned to death is actually rehabilitated and brought back to the society. So the outrage of Mr. President's words, according to me, they have not met the equalizing outrage that needs to be given to it by the Kenyans. No, we cannot hide our face. We cannot sanitize William Ruto. We cannot sanitize the president. We know even, a child that has just learned to reason will understand that by the president saying, sitaki kesi, toweni kesi, he was actually going to withdraw those cases.
That's what he's saying.
And when he said,
yes,
ama mwende sayuni, we understand the context
of that particular
statement. There can never be any other hoodwinking. Because when you see Jacqueline Kimeto here,
yes,
Counsel Jacqueline Kimeto is actually a personal friend, I know her. Counsel Jacqueline Kimeto is bringing in aspects of duress, aspects of coercion into the withdrawal of the suits. If you want to withdraw your suit against me, Simba, the judge or the magistrate will ask you, do you understand that if we withdraw this case, we will not bring it back again? Yes. Were you forced into withdrawing this case or you were not? Then you say, no, I wasn't forced. The moment you make no, I wasn't forced, then that is only when the magistrate or the judge can ratify your withdrawal. But if elements of coercion and duress, which the president public utterances that do not qualify into freedom of speech, no, the president is an icon of the country. You simply cannot just come out and issue unconstitutional words. You must be principled, you must be tamed. You must measure up your words. What are your advisors for? You know, they tell you, if they can tell you how to eat and what not to eat, why can't they tell you how to talk and what not to say? Simba, this thing should really be met with a serious outrage, and I support the lobby group.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing, John. Once we come from this break, yes. I do not know why you gentlemen are running away from the fact that Silas is saying that's an office speaking. It doesn't speak as RUTO now. In fact, it's not even okay to say RUTO. It is constitutionally right to say President William Ruto. So that's an office speaking. So the executive is saying we're going to kill somebody. Why can't that office concerned with that particular issue in this country make a statement? Why is the CJ silent to date? Once we come back right here on Lookuptv, this is the Morning Drift. My name is Simba Elijah Charles Kiage. Do you agree that Mambo ni Matatu is a Kenyan saying? Mambo ni Matatu. Do we say that? Did we say that? When? I haven't said it. Once we come back.
Today we are hosting the RUTO Foundation as they do a food distribution to the community. The community involves people from Huruma. Huruma is where we have the home for the aged. So quite a population from the home are getting the gift packs. Most of our children come from Githogoro and Huruma. These are informal settlements. Honestly, these parents have not been working. The number of children that will come to me, even the ones who are not in school, and tell me, Mwalimu, we have not fed for 3-4 days, is quite huge. So this will go a long way. A family that has not fed for 3 days, they will at least get a meal. We also thank RUTO. This is the second time that you're coming, and it always makes a difference. It always makes a difference.
Thank you for your help. Together, we are changing lives.
Realize your home ownership dream by investing in Brookvale Tuala, a magnificent prime residential property located in Ongata, Rongai. Brookvale Tuala by Safaricom Investment Cooperative overlooks the majestic Ngong Hills and lies only 24 kilometers from Nairobi CBD. The project boasts of well-serviced plots with a perimeter wall, graded roads and a borehole. 50 by 100 plots are going for 1.4 million shillings with a flexible payment plan of up to 6 months. To book your plot, call 0729 121212 today. Safaricom Investment Cooperative, the investment partner of choice.
Silas is saying, oh, you Kenyans, you're joking on an issue that you're not supposed to joke about. It's not my words, it's his words. It's like, oh, I don't understand why Kenyans are making memes out of a grievous stumble on your rights, your constitutional rights. And he says that each right has a measure. And that measure is the ones that you Kenyans are not reacting to. So my question to the gentleman on the panel before we move over to other issues this morning is that, John, well, I understand where Silas is coming from. He's saying, well, sometimes the judiciary waits. They will know very well that there's something unconstitutional going on, and they will sit back and wait. And we've seen those cases, even cases of the appointment of the CSs, BBI and all that. Like, that particular process goes on to the point that we even spend billions, John. But then, until somebody rushes to court, that's when the court comes in and says, well, you see now, they have a point. It is very, very unconstitutional. Kenyans, we are sorry to disappoint you. This can't go on. Do you believe, John, that the CJ at least should have issued a statement? Because, like I told you, when we see the president speak, we don't see Ruto speak. We see the presidency. The presidency has said, we're going to kill you. The president has told you, we are going to force you to take that case out of court, or we're going to make sure you're not in this country. Why have they not spoken? Because those are rights of citizens.
The Chief Justice of the courts, like he rightfully says, has to remain impartial and apolitical. That is to say that they have to wait until these matters are actively in front of them to actually listen to the facts and then determine it according to the law. That is how it works. So in as much as we may be outraged by what the president has said or any other party has said, unfortunately the way the law works is they have to wait until that matter is brought in front of the court. And remember, these guys have to sit, these men and women have to sit and sort of sieve the facts from non-facts, and then look at what the law says and then make a determination from there. So you can imagine if they were to make a pronouncements or to make pronouncements before the matters are actively in front of them or they've come for them for determination, then you'll end up with that problem of being partial, in the sense that the idea is that you bring a case in front of the judge is supposed to be impartial, listens to the litigants, and then determines what is the law.
Yes.
Yes. So the moment when you sort of start interfering from that process of politics, remember the politics side of it is also active. Yes.
Yes.
And that is what part of the presidency does.
Yes.
As the executive. But the judiciary cannot engage in politics.
Yes.
And that's the reason why the judicial arm of the government cannot comment on these matters.
Yes.
That is number one. And then number two, insofar as the president's comments, they have to be contextualized under the context of, remember that as a president, he has access to information that me, you, and everybody else doesn't. Yeah?
John, but we'd like to think.
Let me finish that point.
Yes.
That as a president, he gets briefs and intelligence and all that kind of information.
Yes.
And one of the things that has come out yesterday, the courts, I think the day before yesterday,
yes,
the courts made a decision on a long-running case that has been going on for 36 years on the land in, is it Mukuru?
Yes.
Yes. And the reason I'm bringing up that issue is to tell us, to make the point that the president sometimes has access to information that we don't have. And one of the things that we know in all these conversations that have been going on,
yes,
is that very wealthy litigants will use the courts, and Akiro will tell you that will use the courts to frustrate the law. So you'll have claims, counterclaims, injunctions, stay orders, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
Depending on who you are and, of course, the depth of your pockets, isn't it?
Yes.
So what the president is basically saying is that we know what you do, because remember, even after that, he made those comments. The following day, he went on to contextualize and say that he knows that there are people in the judiciary who are involved in a corruption enterprise. Let us not forget that. Let's not take the comments just in isolation without thinking about the context in which we are operating. Remember, we are Kenyans. We know how these things work.
Yes.
Yes. So if we have the money, we can frustrate the law.
That's it.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And therefore, the president is simply saying that he's vocalizing what you could make the case for. Probably he shouldn't say that. I mean, he shouldn't say it in that context.
Yes.
But the truth of the matter, that is what the law prescribes. You cannot run away from that. If you break the law, you will be held to account for that particular transgression of the law. It's as simple as that.
Simba.
Yes.
If I may react, Simba.
Yes.
You know, it's a very interesting topic that we are discussing today with my colleague, my friend, John.
Yes.
When we talk about people with money frustrating the government, do we hear ourselves? I mean, who is richer than the government? Isn't judiciary government?
Yeah.
A case in hand, we have Miguna. The courts made decision. What did the government do? Who has been jailed for disobeying court orders? And where is Miguna? Even though he came back his operations, actually the hype that Miguna had pre the deportation orders, are no longer there. So when we say that frustrating cases with stay orders, applications, I mean, you're using those ones maybe to jump the law.
Yes.
I mean, there is no stay order which is unlegal or illegal. There is no stay order that is unlawful. If the court deems it fit to give stay orders, it is within the confines of the law. If the court deems it fit to allow an application or several 10 applications, 1,000 applications, we voted for our constitution and Article 159(2)(c). Article 159(2)(d). We talk about the oxygen principles. That you cannot throw out a case on technicality basis. Kitambo, the judges used to sit down and say, no, procedural technicalities, kick out this. But we went ahead and said, no, it does not serve justice to throw out a case based on procedural technicalities. So that is why, even after a magistrate or a judge issuing a direction right now against a case that we have sent in court, I can still approach the same magistrate with an application and they will not kick that application out. Why? That is what the constitution that John voted for wants.
Yes.
Do not throw away my case on procedural technicalities. So, by my colleague coming up, I'm not attacking him on your show, but
John, be ready.
yes. By him coming up and saying that we frustrate cases or frustrate the law through scrupulous applications and stay orders, that statement in itself isn't right. Because there is no magistrate or judge who will give unlawful stay executions, who will give unlawful stay orders. If the stay order for Mugure Thande was unlawful for ruling against the government, what did the government do? They moved a ladder high to the Court of Appeal. And what did the Court of Appeal do? They look at the circumstances and thwarted the stay order.
Yes.
But the Court of Appeal did not say that that stay order was unlawful.
Again,
yes,
it's all those things he's saying make sense. But remember, you have to contextualize these things. The truth of the matter is, we know, and he knows, that wealthy people will use the law to frustrate certain things. As much as he talks about Judge Thande and the issue of the Finance Act,
yes.
The truth of the matter is that there are certain matters that are held with certain urgency. Yes. You file them, and then you file them under a certificate of urgency, and then they are dealt with much more faster than other matters.
Yes.
And what the president is basically saying is, we are trying to turn around a few things in this country. Yes, but unfortunately, we are held up by certain things in certain courts. Yes, and the reason is, of course, we know that people are using money to frustrate whatever I want to do as a president. Yes, so in that context, if you were to remove all those issues that we know around the law and how the law works and what lawyers do with the law, then you have that particular challenge. That is, the president feels frustrated that understanding. Remember, I've just used the example of the Orbit Chemicals case that was settled, I think, yesterday.
Yes.
That thing has been going on for 36 years. Has been going on for 36 years. Where were you 36 years ago?
Born John.
Yes.
But can we say the law is the law?
Yes, the law is the law.
Is that not how it is?
Actually, the Americans say the law is
the law. Is the law. Is an ass, isn't it?
So yes, it's true. But remember, on the other hand, you have to contextualize these things. When you think about the law as a separate sort of standing entity or issue, then it sort of does not make sense when you consider all these things.
John,
because the law, there are so many things that the law is very, very clear, as lawyers would like to say or fond to say, that the law is very clear, but we know it's not always very clear.
There's a context here, John. There's a context here where after the triple threat, hiyo mambo matatu,
yes,
that was issued by the president, we did see Rai go right ahead and withdraw those particular cases from the High Court. Immediately on the back of that, I mean, what is my interpretation, John? But for any other person who's looking at it from outside inside.
If we were to flip that argument, then we would say that Rai would go to court then and claim that the president, his life is in danger, he's being threatened by the president.
That's it.
Yes.
And that's what Kimeto is doing today. And that's what lawyer Kimeto is doing today.
But Kimeto has not been threatened.
Not threatened, but it's coming on the back of that withdrawal. Then you say, well, that's the same thing Silas was saying. Now, how do you go back to the High Court and say, the first question is going to be, why did you withdraw?
Yes, exactly. And that is the point I'm trying to make. I'm saying then, if that is the case, then if we are to go by that maxim, then let Rai go back to court and say that, or go to court and say, put a fresh application and say that my life is in danger.
Pretty much, isn't it? Yeah. So is that then not wrong for the president to go around and utter these kind of things? And number two, now that there is a development in court and we've seen it, the courts are involved. You know, Silas, it's not like this case is not in court. That's what I want you to say. It is in court.
It is.
It's already in court. So it's in the purview of the judiciary. They know that this is our matter. So why hasn't she spoken? Why has the CJ not spoken, John? It is right there. It's not like it's not in court. It is in court. There are developments in this case.
You do not want to prejudice the outcome.
You're not prejudicing it.
You listen to the facts of the case and then you determine according to the law.
John, please hear me. For the sake of the audience who's watching this morning. This particular case that we're talking about, it's not that it's when he wants to go to court. The president said, go withdraw now. If you don't, I'ma kill you. If not, get out of this country. Those are the options.
Go to jail.
That's it. So when the judiciary is being told, make sure it's out. Make sure it's out. Who's the president speaking to? The president is speaking to the judiciary and Rai. He's telling them, wow, you guys, make sure it's out.
Well, let's be careful not to exaggerate things. Let's be careful not to exaggerate things.
John, we are not exaggerating.
You're exaggerating.
No.
We are taking
John, we are not. John, we are not. The question was simple. Is this not a case that was already in court? Yes, it was.
Yes, it is.
And so why is the president saying go withdraw right now? He's saying go withdraw.
Yes,
check it out.
The president said that.
Yes.
But remember, the options were 3. And that is according to what the law will eventually find.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Once you determine a case, there has to be a judgment. And that judgment has to contain certain things. There could be 3, there could be 4, there could be 5, there could be 1. But in this context, there are only 3 options. Number 1, you go to prison, isn't it? If you're found guilty. If it's a criminal matter, you go to jail, isn't it? Number 2, I said if you're a foreigner and you break the law, if you went to South Africa today as a foreigner and you break the law of South Africa, you'll get deported, my friend. You've never seen a Kenyan who's been deported from, say, Canada or the US for breaking the law?
A lot of cases.
You've never seen?
A lot of cases.
Exactly.
A lot of cases.
And then the last one is, we'll take you to heaven. So that one is a bit tricky. So we can have a conversation around the option of heaven. But the other 2 options are in the law.
Silence, please. Yes. I don't. Maybe John. I like the way John is playing safe.
Yes.
But the silence, the question I'm asking, and I'm going to take you back to your comments before we break.
Yes.
Is it that sometimes the judiciary waits for these cases to develop? Maybe there's a petition, and then after that they will come in and then pronounce themselves. But silence. This is an active case in court. It's an active case in court. It's ongoing. It makes the triple threat. Then there is a development on that case. In fact, on one of his threats, he said, I don't want that case, go get it out. Then the following week, that case is already out. Then the judiciary seated is again getting treated to more drama, where one of the lawyers in that particular case is now writing to the same judiciary, asking them, you see, I withdrew, but now I feel like I want to come back. So when you look at that particular case, Silas, I mean, when any other person who's looking at it, you like to think that the judiciary will not essentially wait for the Linda Jamii petition to come up before then they make a pronouncement on it, because it was already in the purview of the courts. It was an ongoing case, Silas. So talk if you can.
Now, Simba, let me bring you to the breakdown of the operations of the judiciary.
Yes.
Initially, we used to have judges operating as both judicial officers and administrative officers. But with the coming of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 and several other Mutunga development, the first CJ under the Constitution, there was the division of the judicial roles and the administrative roles. So currently the administrative roles are being undertaken by the chief registrar of the judiciary. But in this context, Simba, I would say that the political branch of the judiciary, that is my word, it is not in law. The political branch of the judiciary is actually the Law Society of Kenya. Because if the judges are supposed to make noise with the politicians, then our society is going to, the fabric is going to be torn. And Simba will be the first person to say, hey, let us elect the next CJ. The same way we are electing members of parliament and electing the executive. Because they have turned what? Political. And now, when you talk about this case being before the judiciary, we have something to do with sub judice, where you have to really be careful about your comments on a matter before court, which is totally different from res judicata, a principle on a matter that has already been closed. Now, when you come to judges making statements over a matter already before court, remember, the operations of the judiciary is quite funny, Simba, in that you will take a matter before Judge Akiro, and then Judge Simba sits in the appellate court. Then while Judge Akiro is still handling this matter, Judge Simba, who is actually mandated to appeal, to hear appeals, makes a statement, makes a comment, invalidating what Judge Akiro is doing, which he has not even concluded, that has not been brought before Judge Simba as an appeal, and then Simba has already made a comment. Remember, this matter before the High Court can climb the ladder up to the chambers of the CJ. Then it finds that there's a statement out there from the CJ also buttressing the judicial process. That, hey, what are you doing? The president has said, do it, remove it there. Or simply saying, hey, what are you doing? President's words are outrageous. Rai is actually being crucified for no apparent reason. Then when essentially the matter reaches the CJ who made the comment, she's now crucified by her own word. The way you are crucifying me, by my own words in your show here. No, the CJ is crucified by her own words. The president saying, hey, Chief Justice, based on your comments against me, without hearing me first, I don't think you have the legal mandate to hear this case. Recuse yourself. Just remove yourself from this case. Then we have drawbacks. Simba begins to say, but the CJ was making this statement as the head of judiciary, so she made it for the judiciary. So any judge who is a member of the judiciary is actually supposed to recuse himself. And who will hear the matter? So that's why the judiciary will always and must always remain silent on political statements. Political statements require political response. And that is why I am here outrageous about the manner in which Kenyans are handling this thing. And the manner in which, the casual manner in which the opposition touched on this thing. Had the statement of Martha Karua, it had no strength. Had the statement of Honorable Right, the former PM. This statement had no strength, or probably maybe he was fearing jeopardizing the bipartisan talks. But in essence, a political statement needs a political response. A judicial statement needs a judicial response. That's why you file an application, I file a response. You file a pleading, I also respond with a pleading. Then, the statement of the judiciary, if the cases are indeed before court,
yes,
comes out through a judgment. So, that's why if you go to the kenyalaw.org, you'll find so many public statements of the judiciary. So, Kenyans, in waiting for the statement of the judiciary, we have to wait for that ruling on Wakili Kimeto's application for reinstatement of the suit.
Yes.
We need to wait for judgment of the High Court.
Of the Linda Jamii petition.
Yeah, the Linda Jamii petition.
Yes.
Then we'll say now the judiciary has. And that is what the society normally says. If John goes to court and then he gets a favorable decision, or maybe the decision is not favoring him, he doesn't want to appeal, you'll hear him saying the court has spoken.
Yeah. And I agree with all that. And that is why I quite like what he's just said, the political statements. Remember, when you're making that application to withdraw a case, it's not a simple matter of I'm John Wangunyu now, I'm withdrawing this, give me that file, I take it home.
Take it home.
Yes. And then the following day tomorrow,
as it comes, the court literally scrutinizes you as if they didn't know you in the first place. Where is your ID?
Yes.
Are you a Kenyan? Where is your passport?
Yes.
Are you sure you want to withdraw the case?
Yes.
So it's not a walk in the park.
Yes, exactly. So in that sense, then Kimeto and her clients will need to show the reason that they made that application in the first place. And now that they're applying to have it reinstated, what are the reasons? That is one. And then number two, going back to political statements. Political statements are simply political statements. The threats have to be specific. The president has been saying wakora watapeli. Yes. So how do you insert yourself there and say that I am wakora? Yes. That is why I say I like what Akiru has said. It was a political statement. Yes. And it was a political statement.
He's a politician. Simba, this is another political statement. Inside your show.
It's completely analyzed the statement and say, well, kama nisema wakora, how do you say? Mimi huyo mkora alikuwa anaongelesha.
I think Simba, it is high time we be exonerated. So for a long time they have said lawyers are twisting words. But now I fear political scientists.
Mimi ulikuwa huyo mkora.
So you find yourself in that situation. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that?
Mimi huyo mkora aliongelesha.
And then you see the president has a very cunning way of bringing his statements into the Kenyan society.
That guy is very quick on his feet, and he's a very, very bright politician. Threats have to be specific, my friend. You can't say that he's talked generally. That's why I started by saying, why the selective outrage? He said the same thing against cattle rustlers. He said the same thing against public servants. And now there is even an interesting twist that people have gone as far as quoting the Old Testament, that it actually exists in the Bible, that if you break the law of the land, the Bible gives you 4 options rather than 3. So at the end of the day, it is the responsibility of those particular parties, Rai and all those other lawyers, to actually substantiate that it was an actual threat. Otherwise, they were just political statements. And the president, as much as we elevate him and put him in a particular sort of elevated position, has political rights as well. And he can make, and remember the context within which it was made, we say in politics, all politics is local. Those sentiments were made in Western, where we know the sugar industry is a big issue for them.
Yes.
Yes.
So
he was just appealing to his voters and trying to tell them that I'm actually on these matters.
Yes.
I'm dealing with them. I know that there are people doing funny business.
Yes.
So you can't go down and pin him and say that the president. Otherwise, you're saying you're the Wakora then. You're confirming what the president is saying. Wakora watapeli, I'll deal with it.
Maybe Salas, you can help us understand this. That for any other person who's trying to say, well, the CJ should have spoken already because whatever is going on in the country is within the purview of their mandate. I'm reading one of their mandates here. And this is what it says. And this is the closure of their long statement of what their mandate is in the Kenyan economy. This is what they're saying. Further, it fosters social and political stability and promotes national social economic development through its process and decisions. All right? These functions are discharged through the court systems, and they say within that structure, the Judicial Service Commission and the Kenya law, that they have a social responsibility and they foster political stability.
Yes.
What is your interpretation of that?
I want to use the layman's understanding.
Yeah.
If there was no judiciary, Kenya would have fought to square out the post-election stalemate.
Yes.
That was a political affair. But by pushing the process further to the judiciary, and you had the comments, let's go to court, or take me to court. Let's go to court. The courts have spoken.
Yeah.
And then, faith in Kenyans. IBC made its statement, courts now have spoken. So if you dare raise political animosity, not the whole country will buy your argument. They will you will first of all have to convince them to discredit the IBC and discredit the courts. And did you hear what they said? That we accept the ruling, but we do not agree with it. So by that, kitulizo kilifika, political kitulizo. And so that is now their social responsibility and mandate to foster political stability. How many election petitions were taken to court and decided? Several. Of them, from all ranks. So, but when it comes to statements, although I'm still on the context under which these statements were made, they were not appeasing his voters. Actually, that was largely Mr. Dinga's voting base. But the president was in Western for developmental agenda, not vote fishing expedition. He was actually discharging the state mandate as the head of state and the head of government. So while he was making that statement, colleague bringing up a very, very, very good point here on at what point is Mr. Ruto, and at what point is Mr. Ruto the President of the Republic of Kenya? When you look at the law of nations, what we call the public international law, we have international legal persons. And these include international companies. These include leaders of governments. And number one international legal person is the president, speaking on behalf. Any statement he makes. In fact, if the news, the international media were to carry that news, they would not say Mr. Ruto. They would say the Kenya's president now issues threats to foreigners. They wouldn't say Mr. Ruto now issues threats to foreigners because Mr. Ruto as an individual has no capacity to issue such threat. But now, when you talk about the circumstances under which the president made this awkward, archaic, and unwelcome, and couth and I mean degrading and uncivilized statements. I'll call them, they're actually, I mean, foul, they're smelly, stench. These words that the president made are supposed to be condemned. And that makes us partially or partly to believe that the Western might have had a hand in Mr. Ruto's political milestone. Because why haven't they spoken out? Where are the international human rights defenders, apart from the Amnesty International and the few that we've had? Where is the US statement? Because had that statement be on LGBTQ, we would have had a response not only from human rights defenders, but even from the United States itself. Where is their reaction? When somebody's, my colleague is saying that either go to prison or at the end of it, you die. But how will you go to prison? How will you go to prison without first being judicially tried in court? He has discredited court.
I think you've locked on into the sanction this morning. You can actually reduce your volume. Even as he does that.
I quite like how Akiro is exaggerating.
Is that?
He's being melodramatic. And sort of showing. Remember, this was not an official. This was not an official government statement. It was not read on the steps of a Harambee House or in State House. This was done on top of a V8. Yeah, on some field Western.
Of course, the V8 belonged to Mr. Ruto.
Yes,
it was the V8 for Mr. Ruto.
So you cannot give. You cannot
the V8. Was it for Mr. Ruto? My colleague.
That is what I'm saying.
V8 for Mr. Ruto?
No, it's of course the
it was a government property.
But
when I sit at the Harambee House and make statements, I make those statements on behalf of the Republic of Kenya. If I sit, if I stand on the government asset, V8 for the government, I think it was a Lexus.
It was a Lexus.
It was a Lexus. I mean, that is an extension of Harambee House, the movable Harambee House. He made the statement right at the doorstep of Harambee House. I mean, the office of the official office of the president.
We have to understand that as much as I understand my colleagues' outrage and agitation, the truth of the matter is this was simple political statements. You cannot infringe upon people's freedoms to speak. And the president has political rights, can speak. If he had said that on the lawns of State House or inside the State House or on Harambee Avenue, then, or if it was official government statement, then we would have a problem with that. But you cannot castigate the president. I think it's a bit that kind of moral outrage. I don't think it's deserving of those particular comments.
Here's the thing, gentlemen. I want us to move away from the president. We already only have 5 minutes left for this. I want you to take 2 minutes, John. Okay. I want to stick to you before I cross over to Silas. The talks at the borders of Kenya are ongoing, and we do know that there are some issues that are already giving us development. The selection of the IEBC commissioners. We do know that there's still vacancies at the IEBC that have not been filled, and that's already a constitutional problem because some functions of the IEBC are not ongoing currently as it is. And now, this is what the opposition is saying, that the political parties themselves now should be tasked with the responsibility to pick these commissioners, giving us the 1997 situation, where political parties essentially went in and picked the commissioners they believed would carry over the elections. In a minute, before I give the same thing to Silas, the law says, well, according to the Kenyan Constitution, a panel, a selection panel, would then be put together. From now, all the guys who are interviewing for these positions will be interviewed, and then the names sent to the president for approval. But now, there's more coalition saying, nah, let's go back to the 1997. Political parties themselves have to pick the IEBC commissioners. And by the way, it doesn't start now. Raila Amolo Odinga has been saying, let all the political parties also have representatives in IEBC to oversee the IEBC functions. John, is that the way to go? In just a minute before I give it to Silas before we close.
With the issue of the IEBC, of course, is very, very sensitive because we know that as a body or as an institution, it cannot function in the absence of the members and the chairperson.
Yes.
Already we know that there are certain by-elections that should be held because sadly we've lost the members of the elected representative.
Yes.
Therefore, IEBC cannot conduct by-elections in those constituencies or wards and so on and so forth. That is one. And then number two, there is an important exercise that is coming up. The deadline is coming up, the sunset for the review of boundaries. I think it's next year, 2024, which is the sort of the sunset. Yeah. So if it doesn't happen after that, within that time frame, then we're going to end up with problems. So it is very, very important for us to make sure that we have that particular commission in place. Yes, and then, of course, remembering the post-election report by, was it Judge Kriegler?
Yes.
That ideally we should have for certain reasons, including continuity and experience and so on and so forth, we should always try and have or strive to have a fully functioning commission well in advance, so that we do not leave everything to the last minute and then you bring in these guys, there's a lot of pressure, inexperience and so on and so forth, and then you end up having problems with the elections. So that is the sort of the principle.
Yes.
Very, very important. We have to remember that. And then now coming to the sort of substantive question you've asked, I don't think it's a good idea because we've been there before. The Cherera 4. Actively, Baba and what's his name, the former president, the opposition and the president actually actively, and went as far as breaking the law because we know that Masit should not have sat in the IEBC commission.
Yes.
But they went on and did whatever they did, and we ended up where we are today with the opposition complaining that the elections were bungled. So even if we were to involve these people now under the IPPG framework or design, we're still going to have problems in 2027. So let's follow the law.
That's right.
Because the law is what keeps us in check.
That's right.
Yes.
Pretty much. But Silas, we gotta go. 45 seconds, please. Once you speak, I will not speak. We step on our break. 45 seconds.
It's been indeed a very wonderful show today. Yeah. What I can say is that in terms of the IEBC selection, you see the president being a politician by nature, being given that mandate to have the final say in terms of appointment, even if they have to be vetted by Parliament.
Yes.
I believe it brings in what you call impartiality.
Yes.
And so, but again, on the other hand, politicians, they have shown their incapacity to be able to handle their affairs amicably.
Yes.
So, by the term independence, the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission, I think that office should indeed be independent.
Pretty much. Guess what? I'll call this gentleman again because there are other things that are building up, even on the issues of the cost of living. We do understand the technical committees are also meeting on the sidelines then to advise the 10 on exactly how they're supposed to move forward then in coming up with those solutions. Guess what? Take them back to the time that they joined us online at Lookuptv across all your social media platforms. We take a tiny breather. Once we come back, let's move away from the mambo ni matatu, tuangalie mambo mengine ambayo yanaweza kuwa manne, matano, sita, ama saba. As we come back.
Infinity